दात वली शे ना है शेख यास दात वली शे ना है सच वली शे आहे ऐं जो सच मचाए मच वो मच वली शे आहे मां दावत ॾींदुसि असांजे अॼोके इन सेशन जे की नोट स्पीकर What loves more than I become emotional in a way to introduce him. Please welcome Zulfiqar Ali Bhutto Junior. संदसि वॾी महिरबानी सिंध मां असांजी दावत ते हिते आया इहो उन्हनि जो गुरु हुया
Password is Hikba34. Wow. I think you already had your keynote. Can we have one more round of applause for Suhaya Bro, please? I think I have to help them with the presentation. Bulhan Name, it's a PowerPoint presentation. Sorry, sometimes oh, that's my brother-in-law. That's his ID. You know, actually just delete it. We don't need the presentation. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much to the board of the Sindhi Association of North America for this generous invitation. And thank you all, our dear audience, for taking the time out of your evenings to be here. It is a trying time for many in Pakistan, as our people face tremendous and inconsolable hardship. I ask that we start with two small prayers, something like a tilawat to ground us in this space. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. نادي عليا مظهر العجائب تجده عونالك فل النوايا كل هما وغما سينجلي بعظمتك يا الله ونبواياتك يا محمد وبواياتك يا علي يا علي يا علي एक ओंकार सतनाम करता पुरख निर्भव निर्वैर अकाल मूरत अजुनी से भंग गुर प्रसाद जप आद सच जुगाद सच है भी सच नानक हो से भी सच. Much of my artistic practice is shaped by the fact that I am a child of exile. Born in Damascus to a Lebanese mother and Sindhi father, Shaheed Mir Murtaza Bhutto. In his office in Damascus, thank you. In his office in Damascus, there was a shelf with two glass bottles, one filled with water, the other with sand. They were the water and sand of the Indus, a river, he said, one day I would see. I have since then had the fortune of traveling down the Indus from Chashma Barrage to Ghazi Ghat, slowly paddling down and camping each night on a different island. I have swum in the Indus, I have bathed in the Indus, I have brushed my teeth in the Indus, I have eaten from the Indus. I have seen her at her most voluminous in the upper Saraiki belt, at her most spiritual conjunction in Sakhar, and at her most vulnerable at Keti Mandir, where if the powers that be will, she is able to meet the sea. Yet I would never say that I have truly seen her. Her oxygen-rich alluvial waters are too murky, and so she continues to mystify, hiding what lurks beneath. It is her refusal to be completely legible that has infuriated the men in power, who have imprisoned her through dams, barrages, canals, pollution, and narrow embankments that any true inhabitant of this great river system will tell you are nothing short of criminal. In the 1840s, the British sent several expeditions down the Indus, or rather up the Indus from Karachi. A wild and unpredictable river that changed so regularly that no map could be trusted for more than a year. It most baffled our former colonizers in Sindh, where it separated into several streams, lakes, lagoons, that every summer and monsoon transformed a desert into a lush, wet wonderland that nursed jungles home to thousands of deer, otters, wolves, jackals, hyenas, tigers, birds, crocodiles, and yes, at one time, elephants, rhinos, and lions too. From Richard Burton to Alexander Burns, T. Postman, any visitor to Sindh wrote about its lush riverine jungles, its thin population that lived on subsistence farming and never starved. The British hated it. To them, Sindh was a failure of governance, and they were determined to drain our streams, dam our rivers, cut down our forests, and populate Sindh so that its subsistence farms could turn into industrial ones that would feed their ever more greedy imperial fantasies. Today, the Indus does not flow beyond Kotri Barrage in Hyderabad. She no longer meets the sea, her lover. Instead, the sea intrudes inland, slowly eating away at our coast. In fact, the entirety of the district of Thatta was formed by the Indus. Had the Indus not deposited her alluvium, her silt, her mud, there would be no Makli. There would be no Shah Jahan Mosque. There would be no Sindh.
Wow.
In the wet season, Sindh was called the Mitto Samundr, the sweet ocean. Rainwater would inundate hundreds of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres of land, and the Mohana and the Mirbal and the Malha would travel up and down, fishing. Our Bulhan, our dolphin, would travel in and out of different streams, and then after a couple months, this Mitto Samundra would find its way into the big, the Vaddo Samundra. Sakhar and Rohri became a center of British governance after the brutal annexation of the province in 1849. In the 1850s, seeing the hills that towered over the Indus at this point, the British dreamed up a barrage. An extensive series of surveys dismissed the idea, claiming that Sindh received the cumulative waters of all of Punjab's rivers. In the 1870s, the British began building barrages upstream in Punjab, diverting waters to feed new tracts of cotton and sugar. By 1919, the winter level of the Indus in Sindh had fallen to dramatically low levels, and the British believed that a barrage was essential. And so we have the British Imperial Swan Song of Engineering, Sakhar Barrage, built in 1928 and completed in 1932. From this barrage, 7 canals would branch out, drawing billions of cusics from our Lion River. With not one drop finding its way back into the Indus downstream, any excess water would either seep into the surrounding soil or evaporate in the hot, Sindhi summer sun. This evaporation would cause salinity and waterlogging, rendering 43% of all land in Upper Sindh useless. In an era where humanity attempts to control all things natural, we realize that we do a disservice to no one but ourselves. The river and water systems of South Asia have never been static. They move as they will. creating and destroying civilizations, but always sustaining. Perhaps it is time we fought with nature rather than against it. Has anyone ever seen Batman and Robin? Yeah, I see a few hands. With the one with Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Freeze. Yeah? It was, I think, the worst Batman ever made. But it might seem silly to mention, but I have a point here. There is a scene in which Poison Ivy confronts Bruce Wayne, George Clooney. And she tells him that he has the power to stop environmental collapse just with one finger on a button. What does Bruce Wayne say? He says, without oil and petroleum and electricity, we will all starve. That is precisely the predicament that we're in. Billionaires like Batman making sure we are completely reliant on fossil fuels and that saving the rainforest becomes an empty promise to make a few tree huggers happy. Last year, in the wake of the floods, our own government negotiated the COP27's Damage and Loss Fund in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. Some have argued that this was an easy bailout for rich countries and a paycheck to whoever was of power at home. To others, it was a clever stroke of diplomacy by a poor country. Whatever it may pan out to be to our Mazdoor, Kisan, Mirbar, Malha, and Hari brothers and sisters, this agreement means close to nothing when their homes are destroyed in the name of development, and then again by floods and excessive heat. When have Pakistan's ruling parties ever proved transparent and accountable, let alone to empower the poor and needy? Writer and climate activist Naomi Klein once said that we are living in the age of prophecy, a time that all religions predicted, doomsday, and the end of humanity. There is no reversing climate change at this point, which is maybe why we find excitement in handouts like COP27's Loss and Damage Fund. My work as an artist, which you can't see because we're having technical issues. My work as an artist looks at a 10-kilometer stretch of the river between the hill cities of Sakhar and Rohri, the Labbe Mehran, the lips of the Indus, where she drops 1 meter in elevation, marking her lower course and historic delta. I choose to see this site not through the eyes of humans alone, but through this river's shyest and most resilient mammal, the Indus River dolphin. Through millions of years of evolution, the dolphin has no need for eyes. Bulhan, as she is known in Sindhi and Saraiki, has no lens, only a pinhole, sensing the most basic changes in light and dark. It may interest you to know that cetaceans, whales, dolphins, etc., for the most part can trace their origin to Pakistan's Patwar Plateau and Salt Range. As the Indian plate inched closer to the Asian plate, a sea began to form, known as the Tethys Sea. It was on its shores that a wolf-like dinosaur would go back to the water, its paws morphing into fins and eventually becoming a whale prototype. This fossil has been aptly named Pakisaurus, after our dear Pakistan, and in fact proves what many scientists were already theorizing, that as the Indian plate inched closer to the Asian plate, the Tethys Sea dried up and formed the Yangtze, the Irrawaddy, the Ganga, the Indus, and so on and so forth. And these proto-dolphins evolved with it. So our Bulhan, our Sindhi dolphin, is practically a dinosaur. Coming back to Pakistan in 2020, my instinct was basic. Having studied alternative photography, I took my pinhole camera and decided I would take landscape photos of these 7 sites that dot this 10-kilometer stretch. imitating how the dolphins would see them, from shrines to major engineering projects that have dictated their fate as a species for hundreds of years. Alongside this methodology, archives also pick up relevance. In particular, a book by an Italian scientist named Dr. Giorgio Pillari. When we speak of reparations, particularly in Pakistan, or climate reparations even, we are usually speaking about money, objects, jewels, assets, essentially. Yet it is rare that we speak about stolen bodies, the bodies that could have lent themselves to a better country and a better ecosystem. The same resentment for the natural world that the British had led them to systematically annihilate wildlife in their colonies. They drew up lists of thousands of tigers, wolves, jackals, hyenas, crocodiles, gazelles, hog deer, wild boar, otters, badgers, lions, cheetahs, leopards, and yes, even dolphins that they killed in the riverine forests of the Indus, the Kirthar Hills, and the Thar Desert. This attitude would continue into Ayyub-era Pakistan, which makes sense given Ayyub himself was a product of British military strategy. Forests, indigenous farming methods, and desi seeds, and the Indus Basin itself would be seen with such disdain. The damming of the Indus was a project in annihilation. The intent being to divert all the water to farms and industry and leaving this huge river dry. For this to work, bodies would have to be extracted, human bodies and non-human bodies, plant bodies and tree bodies. Then of course there were the useful bodies. We could keep those. The Hari, Kisan and Mazdoor that would toil, bleed and sweat until they themselves were no longer needed. Why dolphins, you might ask? Dolphins remain one of the last indigenous animals of the Indus River and of Sindh. In 1962, when Guddu Barrage and Kotri Barrage were completed, many thought that the Indus River dolphin had all gone extinct, had it not been for one small fishing family. Karam Elahi and his sons called Dr. Giorgio Pillari, a dolphin scientist. And through his efforts, their efforts, and the efforts of the Sindh Wildlife Department, the Indus River dolphins' numbers jumped from 120 individuals in 1972 to 2,000 today. It is one of our few success stories and an example of how unity can save us. Textile as a medium is important to me because it has the ability to step out of the snobbery of artistic practice. It is craft, craft is labor, craft is work, and craft to me is the language of the people. It is the script of the soil. Craft engages with its surroundings because it has to. Historically, crafts are dictated by resources, and those resources are slimming. The Pakistani establishment has had a long love affair with dams. So much so that they're so obsessed with water storage that they've forgotten about water drainage, and the two are interconnected.
Yeah, exactly right.
The hydrological cycle depends on an unbroken circle. Storm clouds gather in the sea, they follow the delta to the mountains, they rain in the hills, they form glaciers, and those glaciers melt into the river, and the cycle starts all over again. Pakistan has been in a drought since 1974. Moments like the flood of 2022 were once common. And additionally, all the dams in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, their water levels are going dangerously low. And what is the response of our establishment but to build more dams and to make it illegal to even say anything against them? Build as many dams as you like, but if the water of the Indus does not kiss the sea, then you will have no water in Punjab. As our mother Sindhu continues to be suffocated, her multiple streams confined to a single trickle and a dry dust bowl of a riverbed left for our people, so too are our opinions, our beliefs, our faiths, and our identities strangled away from us. They are being eroded away like the mudflats of the Indus Delta. Radical thoughts consumed and annihilated by a sea of intolerance. The river that once connected north and south, mountain and ocean, Sindhi, Saraiki, Pashto, Hindko, Balochi, Punjabi, has now become a dividing line between the powerful and the meek, the haves and the have-nots, free thought and stifling control. Poets, musicians, and artists whose verse and brushstroke were inspired by the river and its surrounding burrows and pits were once considered heroes and revolutionaries. The artist of today's Pakistan is called instead a witch and a sorcerer, and their work labeled a perverse, corrupting force in a country that is looking for a new identity. An identity that does not include a free river, a free people, a kind people. Pakistan more and more chooses a politics of death over life and of greed over generosity. My friends, brothers and sisters, how can I even tell you what has become of our sindh? Our province is for sale. Our rivers, our animals, our people, our mountains, all being stripped away from us. For who? Certainly not for you. From Kashmir to Katie Bandar, Kirtar, Kathor, and the Karunjhar, from Arol to Amri and Odero Lal, we are being stripped away of everything. Pakistan is not on the forefront of the war against climate change, as our senators would tell you. Pakistan is on the forefront of a war against its own people and ecology.
Wow. Wow.
We are a torn, divided, damned, and intellectually drained Pakistan. Our river is dying and no dam can save her. If you wish to see more water in Punjab, you must let the Indus kiss the sea. It is the natural order. It is God's ordained order. It is science. And if you do not, you risk starving 80% of your population. The fight against climate change is not one of jargon and meaningless pledges. It is a question of unity, embracing difference. At the end of the day, it should not matter if your neighbor is trans, gay, straight, bi, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, Sikh, Sunni, Shia, Sindhi, Shidi, Baloch, Hazara, Balti, male, female, rich or poor. Eventually you will both drown. In this fight for our very existence, do not place your faith in families like mine, in the landed gentry, the industrialists, the sharifs, the khans, the mullahs, and most certainly not the men in uniform. Look instead in the eyes of the hari, the kisan, the mazdoor, the mirvar, the malha, the bhil, the bhagri, the kholi, the megwar, the faqir, the khajasra, the hijra, and in their eyes you will see our revolution.
Yellow.